welcome to our talk back after the Alabama story. I have the great pleasure of sitting here with Kenneth Jones, who wrote this beautiful play that you just heard read. Kenneth is a New York City-based playwright, lyricist, librettist, and theater advocate. His play Alabama Story, which you just heard, was a 2016 nominee for the Steinberg American Theater Critics Association Award and a 2014 finalist for the O'Neill National Playwrights Conference. By fall of 2020, it will have been seen in at least 34 cities around the nation. And you are so generous to spend your time with us and chat with us today. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm so thrilled that you guys were able to do the play in this unique format in this crazy time.
We're thrilled too. Where are we talking to you from?
I'm in Queens, New York, in Sunnyside, Queens, about a mile from the East River, a couple of miles from Elmhurst, Queens, which was sort of ground zero here for the COVID crisis, when we were at the worst numbers in the country. It was all happening in Queens. But thankfully our numbers are down and things are better here in New York City and slowly recovering.
Moving in the right direction. That's really good to hear, and must have been very, very intense to be in Queens and New York during this time.
Absolutely.
We were just chatting a little bit. We're both Midwesterners. Can you tell me where you're originally from and how you got to Queens?
Yeah, I grew up in suburban Detroit, in Southfield, Michigan, and Beverly Hills, Michigan, and Birmingham, Michigan, and I wanted to write for the theater from a really young age, but didn't really know how to make a living at it. So I became a journalist, a theater journalist, and my goal was to be a theater critic. And I really wanted to be like the theater critic at the Detroit News, which happened to be the newspaper that my parents took. And about 10 years after college, I became the theater critic at the Detroit News and was very lucky to do that for many years and just absorbed all of that and sort of put my playwriting dreams on hold and was very passionate about supporting the theater as a critic. And when I was 33, I moved to New York City. They were cutting back on arts coverage, as many papers are cutting back on arts coverage even today. And I decided to move to New York City to sort of finally pursue being a dramatist. And I actually fell into a journalism job by day, but at night I got into the BMI workshop, which is a prominent songwriting workshop in New York, and just pursued my playwriting goals and ultimately left my day job to foolishly throw myself into playwriting full time.
But I am interested, you do write in a lot of different mediums, as having been a journalist and being a lyricist and librettist and obviously a playwright. I'm wondering if you have a standard writing process? Do you have how does your writing process shift between all these different mediums?
Well, I think certainly being a journalist helped me grow muscle as a storyteller, beginning, middle, and end. Every journalism story, every feature piece that I wrote, every interview has to be shaped as a beginning, middle, and end story and as a journey. And I think that helped me become a dramatist, to see structure, for example, and to see who a main character is or give voice to people. So being a journalist absolutely helped. And I like to write in all kinds of forms. I like to write presentationally, and I like to write very naturalistically. Alabama Story is an example of a highly theatrical kind of writing that has traditional elements that I twist and play with, direct address and narration and pop-up, characters just popping up in scenes. I like it to be sort of hyper theatrical, as I like to say. So that's very, you can't really replicate Alabama Story as a film. I mean, I think there is a film to be made of it somehow. But, so I write in different styles. I wrote a play called Hollywood, Nebraska, which is very family drama. No one's talking to the audience. There's not a prologue or an epilogue as there is in Alabama Story. So I just like to write in all kinds of ways and keep myself fresh and keep myself interested.
Do you have a process? Do you just sit down and it rolls out? Are you somebody who needs to get up every morning at a certain time? Are you a writer who starts with the research, or is it different for each project?
Yeah, it is different for each project. It's usually it starts with a character or a conflict or a place, and I just kind of grow it from there. Alabama Story began as a I opened up the newspaper and found Emily Reed's obituary in the New York Times, and all of it was laid out in front of me. This drama just kind of blossomed in my mind. A very strong character, a woman, another very strong character, a man, liberal and conservative, and insider and outsider, and north and south. All this just blossomed. I just started writing out ideas. Two great characters really started it all. And that it was a real story gave me structure in that I knew it all happened in 1959. It all happened in 1 year. So it's like, well, thank you, world. I could go from January to January, and there was my built-in structure. Other times it's less easy to deal with structure. I have a handful of characters and I might know what they want to say, but the journey is different.
And I feel like this is probably the Alabama story is a lovely coming together of your work and experience as a journalist, since there's real source material there. And how much of the play is referencing or drawing on that source material, and how much of that is really the creative muse?
Yeah, it's about half and half. There was a wealth of real material to deal with. Like you said, I went to Montgomery to the state archives.
Oh, you did?
Looked at microfilm and looked at copies of the Montgomery Home News, which was the segregationist paper, and talked to people. It was just a dream to research and talk and breathe the air of this place. As you know, Montgomery is the cradle of the Confederacy and the cradle of civil rights. So that it was just to walk the streets that Rosa Parks walked, and to walk the streets that George Wallace walked. Fascinating.
Yeah.
A lot of the newspaper articles, I sort of swiped really good dialogue from. What the senator says is a lot of what the senator says is really what he said, and even more extreme. So a lot of what Emily says in her interview is really largely what she said. I certainly tweaked it and changed it and made it more dramatic. Yeah, it was a great adventure going there. And I toured antebellum homes, and I talked to librarians, and I went to Demopolis, where part of the play is set, and went into historic homes there. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the Deep South, and I fell in love with this complicated place. So research absolutely was a big part of it.
When you said that you fell in love with it, I can tell that there's certainly an element of a love letter in this play.
Yeah, I went to Oak Park, which is a real park in Montgomery, and sat on a bench that I imagine was Lily and Joshua's bench. And I walked through this park that was once chained up and once had a zoo in it and a little train. And it's kind of a scrappy little park now. But there are plaques about the history of the park, and it was important to be there. And I often pluck up, I've gone a couple of times now, and I steal some magnolia leaves from the ground and keep them in my office. Yeah, it was a charmed passion project. I'm so pleased that it's had a life, because you spend enough time writing something, and it's not always a guarantee that it will have a life.
I'm wondering if you can talk about how the play may have changed since the developmental process at PTC's play-by-play series, which is their play development series, and how you think the resonance of the play has changed since it was written.
Yeah, when I first started writing it, I really viewed it as an entertainment, as a sort of bigger than life portrait about these two fascinating characters. It's gotten sadly more and more relevant as the years have gone by. I haven't changed it much. The original production, directed by Karen Eisenberg in Utah, was amazing. And then I would see all these subsequent productions and tweak it and make it better and trim it up. And then you would just keep reading the headlines about what was happening in the country. And certainly what's happened in the past 4 years has made it even more vibrant. That it's about a conservative politician who's persecuting a woman in power who threatens him is really powerful today. You can't help but think of, the idea of nevertheless she persisted, and Emily Reed persists and persists. And it's very much a play about character and people of good character, and how character reveals itself in hard times. That's not exactly what I was saying when it first premiered. I mean, I was aware of that, but I mostly thought it was kind of a love letter to reading and to openness and to free expression
Yeah.
and freedom of thought. And now I'm thinking, wow, this really is so intensely about character. You know, I hope times will change, and I do hope the play will have a long life for the next 100 years for my heirs to take it over. You know, but I think it will be a snapshot of a period rather than a reflection of what we are going through.
Sure.
I hope.
Are you working on anything now, or are you just taking the time to sort of survive and breathe through the current moment?
Yeah, I was very, very, very lucky to get a phone call from Florida Studio Theater in Sarasota, and I got commissioned this spring. It was sort of a miracle that fell out of the sky because I had three productions of Alabama Story canceled this spring due to COVID.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I'm working on something new. It's also set in the Deep South. I didn't think I would stay in the Deep South, but I read an article and read something about some place, and it inspired me. So I'm working on a new play for Florida Studio Theater at the moment.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us and letting us know a little bit about your process and letting us read your beautiful play.
Thank you for your commitment to new work. It's so important. It's so important, and it means a lot that you gave it some time.